From a 9-game win streak last season to a 9-game losing streak this season, NC State men's basketball has finally snapped the streak.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our Monday show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets. That first $5 bet wins. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to get started. Happy Monday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, NC State men's basketball has finally won a game. They have snapped their 9-game losing streak with an 8-point win over Boston College on Saturday. The war is over. Perhaps they're off the schneid. Probably not, but it just feels good to win a game. Watching them lose 9 ACC basketball games in a row is falling off the biggest cliff imaginable from what we saw last season. This season has not gone well. We all know this, but definitely feels good to put one in the win column.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is what we've always talked about, right? It was the idea that waiting for something bad to happen, something bad is going to happen. With all due respect, you aren't Steve Lacy, and this ain't the song Dark Red. Something bad is not about to happen to you. You have to figure out a way to win games, and that's what this team did. At the end of the day, you have to give them credit because all of the things that we complained about, were they all cleaned up in this game? No. Were you playing an excellent opponent? Were you playing a top-tier team? No. Boston College is one of the 2 teams that is now behind us. However, you did enough, and that's all that matters. When you are going through hell, you don't stop. You just put your head down and keep going. And to some extent, the Wolfpack just kept going in this game. You talk about finding ways to win even when things are going right. Like I said, the things that we complained about in the past were not cleaned up in a meaningful way. Take a wild guess as to what the 3-point field goal percentage was in this game, Grayson.
I had it in my mind earlier, but it was ugly. I know that.
21.7%. But guess what still happened? This team found a way to win. Guess what the free throw percentage was in this game, Grayson?
Probably right around their average. I'm going to say like 70%.
68. And yet you find a way to win. You hang your hat on getting stops defensively. You hang your hat on, you know what? We may not be shooting well, but we're going to force y'all to be just as bad as we are shooting. We'll make this a rock fight. And again, we're going to keep clawing. We're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep battling. And this game, at the end of the day, is going to end up with us as the winner because, again, we're going to sustain longer in this rock fight. The one thing I will say that they did clean up, that all credit to them for cleaning up, a hot start was finally achieved.
Yes.
It was no longer we're playing out of a hole, we're fighting back, we're trying to do our best to get out of a hole. When you start off a game up 10-2, when you start off a game and you go on that type of run, when you have a double-digit lead before halftime, that is where you want to be. So at the end of the day, everything in this game, NC State did not clean up all the things that who they are at this point, right? Let's just be honest. These aren't, problems that have been, it's been up and down and inconsistent. They did not clean up those things, but they cleaned up the biggest one, which is getting off to a hot start.
Yeah, and to your point, they actually never trailed in this game. The only time the game was tied was when it was 0-0. So they led this game for 39 minutes and 5 seconds, a virtual wire-to-wire victory. They did get off to a very hot start. Jaden Taylor was a catalyst for doing that. I think he had like 8 points right out of the gate. We took that early lead. This was a game that you could not lose. And to Kenton's point again, Boston College is a really bad team. So are we. But if we're planning on getting out of the basement of the ACC, especially when you're playing these guys at home, this was an absolute cannot lose type of game. And credit to the team, they came out and they played with that type of urgency. Jaden Taylor was the catalyst in the first half. He ended up with 19 for the entirety of this game. One of the better first halves I've seen in quite some time for both Jaden and the team as a whole. 44 points there in the first half. And you gave the impression that this game was never in doubt. And that's something that this team really needed to find over the course of this 9-game losing streak. To play with that type of intensity and urgency there in the first half is exactly what you needed to see. You found a way to still get out-rebounded in this game despite winning by 8 points, but I will tell you what the ultimate factor in this game: turnovers. Boston College had 16 of them. NC State only turned the ball over 5 times. Points off of turnovers: Boston College 3, NC State 15. That right there is your ball game. When you still didn't shoot that great from the perimeter, didn't shoot that great from the foul line, points off of turnover was the difference. And so credit to the guys, credit to Coach Keats, credit to the staff. Finally turned a 9-game losing streak into a W. We've all been waiting to see this. And something I heard Coach Keats talk about post-game, their new goal, obviously, because all the other ones are out the window, make it back into the ACC tournament. If nothing else can go right and nothing else can go wrong, find a way to get back into the ACC tournament. He noted that it would indeed be embarrassing to win it one year and miss it altogether in the next. So, Kenton, that's kind of where our conversation is going to turn here. With 6 regular season games left to play, and I'll say this as well, the hardest part of the remaining schedule is now kind of out of the way, although you do still have to go down the road into Dirty Footland this coming week. But what do you estimate the record over the last 6 games needs to be to have a chance to make it back into the ACC tournament?
To have a chance, 3-3. I think 3-3 is the minimum to have a chance. I think 4-2 puts you in a really good spot. 5-1 to run the table, you're virtually guaranteed to be in. Like, there's a lot that would have to go wrong for you to go undefeated 5-1 down the stretch and still not get in. But 3-3 gives you a shot. That gives you a snowball's chance in hell. But again, it's not great. It's not great. It's not a lock at 3-3. 3-3, you still need a lot of help. 4-2, I think you need help, but a little less help. Again, 5-1 undefeated is to the point where I'd say if things just kind of hold serve, you'll be all right. But 3-3 is the number for me where I look at this team and I say, you can catch somebody, because it's not just about winning games at this point. Yeah. You need to win games, but obviously you're behind people at the end of the season. For those of you who aren't familiar with baseball, right, when your favorite team is in a pennant race, whatever the case may be, it's never just about my team needs to win series and we'll be okay. No. If you're trailing somebody, if you're back in that wild card, you need somebody to lose on top of you.
Yeah, NC State's going to have to find a way to pick off some of these games, and they're more than likely going to need a little bit of help as well. Now that we're 3rd worst in the conference with the hurdling of Boston College, you sit a game and a half behind Cal and Syracuse. We have Syracuse on the schedule coming up. That game just got a lot more important if you do want to get out of the basement. I already told you we do have to go on the road to the Dirty Foot Club. They're in the middle of the pack. We have to play Georgia Tech. They're in the middle of the pack. We play Pittsburgh. They're in the middle of the pack. The opportunity will be there for NC State to pull themselves back out of this pit. And you also get to play Miami. They are pretty much cemented in the bottom of that pit. So if you can find a way to right your wrongs, at least just for a couple more weeks, you have what it takes to get out of the basement of the ACC. You're going to need some help. You're going to need Syracuse to probably lose half, if not a little bit over half of their games left. Probably could see the same thing with Cal, because both of those teams are a game and a half ahead of us. But NC State, if their new goal is to make it back into the ACC tournament, it's on the table. It's there for the take.
It surely is. And besides, don't let NC State get hot. Hey, I'm not saying this is last year's team, but I am saying we have learned our lesson, or the rest of the ACC has learned their lesson. Don't let them boys from Raleigh get hot. Don't let it happen.
This team finding a way to now go on a winning streak would be maybe the most ironic, funniest, illogical thing I would ever see in my entire life. For Old Takes Exposed, if you're listening, it's not going to happen. This team is not last year's team. It was nice to see both DJs in the building on Saturday. I hate they had to witness what we're currently going through, but nonetheless, this team can still make it back into the ACC tournament. And I guess we're required to say, after what we saw last year, anything can happen. We have doubts, but just make it back into the ACC tournament. Nothing would be more embarrassing, to Keats' credit, than winning it one year and missing it altogether the next. So it was nice to see them beat Boston College, a game that you should have won, and you did, but certainly more business is ahead on the schedule. Coming up next, we're going to switch gears and get into women's basketball. Gave away a tough one on Sunday in Chapel Hill. More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Our Monday sponsor is FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on this action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets all throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off and you want to get back in on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets with a same-game parlay. Personally, I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game more exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chances. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Middle portion of our Monday show, now switching gears and getting into women's basketball. Extremely tough loss on Sunday, a 66-65 loss to the women's Dirty Foot Club over in Chapel Hill. A game that we had for the taking. We had multiple leads there in the fourth quarter. Could not get it done from the free throw line. Could not get it done from the perimeter. Could not get it done drawing up a last-second play there at the very end. Tough loss, but this team will roll on. Kenton, what are your main takeaways from a one-point loss to Chapel?
I hate to say it, and I hate to sound like I'm giving these women an out because I know that would be the last thing in the world that Westmore wants, but this was somewhat of a schedule loss. I mean, if you look at, how things had kind of gone throughout this, what Grayson and I and what anybody in the nation would recognize is one of the tougher 5-game stretches that you're going to see in conference for anybody. You were expecting at some point in time there would be a game where you kind of look up and say, oh, man, we gave this one away. And you would hope for that as opposed to the game where you just get your doors blown off, where it's just like, hey, you've got nothing left in the tank, because that way you can learn from it. You can look at it and you can say, okay, even when we're playing good enough ain't good enough. We need to play at a high level consistently. We need to lock in on the details consistently. And so, I mean, obviously you hate to lose those bozos. That's never a good feeling. That is never a good feeling. Grayson and I have talked about this ad nauseum. If there was a spitting contest with those clowns, I'd want to win that, okay? If it was doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If I'm going against the Dirty Foot Club, I want to win, of course. But with that in mind, I mean, again, this was a game where it just seemed like, I won't say they were out of gas, but down the stretch, the comeback was ferocious. You had a really tough second half there where I've talked about this before, but one of the unfortunate parts of Westmore's team sometimes, they can have a quarter or so where they just go ice cold. We saw that in the second quarter in which we were outscored 18-4. But again, this team, I'm not really too worried about this game. Hey, shake it off, bounce back, win the next one, and keep pushing.
Yeah, the most frustrating part of this game is you played so poorly on the road against a ranked opponent, and it's a rivalry game, and you still only lost by just 1 point. We were putrid at the free throw line, 5 of 13. If you hit just 2 more of those, you win the game. 4 of 20 from beyond the perimeter. If you hit just 1 more of those, you win the game. We talked about that dreadful second quarter. NC State actually outscored Carolina in 3 of the 4 quarters, the first quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. But because of how bad the second quarter was, you still found a way to lose the game. Just 4 points in that second quarter. Isaiah James didn't even score in the entirety of the first half. She picked up 2 early fouls, and Westmore was probably a little bit too careful with how often he ran her out there, picking up those 2 early fouls. And it cost us. When you can't get it done at the foul line, can't find a way to bury something from the perimeter, and you let Carolina, or any team, fill in the blank, but especially Carolina, have extra breaths of life. Make them think that they're still in the game. They'll still be in the game. And so this was a very irritating loss because, again, despite playing so poorly and leaving so many points on the table, you still should have won. You still should have outplayed them just enough to come away with a win. Turns out to be a loss. I will say this on the team, though, not worried. It will certainly be a concern if you keep having very poor second quarters, but that seems to be more of a bug than a feature. Still have all the faith in the world in the Westmore and the ladies.
Yeah, and they're not at the end of this gauntlet yet. they're not at the, as the old song goes, the no leaf clover. The light at the end of the tunnel is just a freight train coming your way, and that freight train is Georgia Tech, followed by College Game Day, L. Duncan and Company, and Coach Ivy and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So this is not over yet. They're not in the clear. Like, oh well, this game is dropped, and now we're into the cupcakes of the schedule. You're not there. They're not there. So this team, again, like Grayson said, wasn't a great performance. And that's why I said your good ain't good enough. You need to be better than good enough. You need to be better than them. We were right there in order to kind of get a game like this, especially in a rivalry matchup, top 15 game. You need to be, right there and ready to roll here. But again, on the road, in the middle of this stretch, it feels like, and again, I know it sounds like an excuse, but it was a schedule loss, and I can live with that. Now, when tournament time comes around, don't you let up. Don't you let up on these. If you see this squad again, I need if you've ever seen the movie Kicking and Screaming, when Will Ferrell was playing tetherball with his dad, and he was like, now I bury you. I bury you. I need that treatment. I need a burial. I need Courtney Bangard to have a tough time showing her face in the triangle after what happens in that game. But with this one, hey, ladies, it's all right. Y'all have won more than enough to make us proud. Keep it up. Keep doing what you do. We know you'll be right back on the horse in no time.
Speaking of that gauntlet, if you do look over the course of the last couple games, Duke at home, they were number 10. Florida State on the road, they were also ranked, but we embarrassed them. A sneaky Miami team in Reynolds. You had this game on Sunday against the Dirty Foot Club, and then on the road against ranked Georgia Tech. And then you do have College Game Day coming to Reynolds Coliseum next Sunday against the second-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish. If there was ever a game that feels likely to drop, it was probably this one. And that doesn't sugarcoat anything. It certainly doesn't make you feel any better about it because you should have won anyway. But I do think this feels a lot more just like a bump in a road than a massive roadblock. And so if anyone can rally the troops, we know Westmore can. He'll find a way to right these wrongs and get these girls back on track, playing the way that they have been over the course of the last week or so. Still hurts to lose this game. But again, you have College Game Day coming to Reynolds Coliseum against second-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish. That's a really big deal and a primetime stage yet again. Westmore and this women's program usually finds a way to thrive in spots like that one. So if you needed to have, Kenton calls it a scheduled loss, to get it out of your system, this might have been a really good spot to do so. Refocus. Again, your next game is on the road against Georgia Tech. It's going to be a tough one, but if you can get things back on track and find a way to attack Notre Dame next weekend at full strength, nobody will even remember this loss at the end of the regular season. Coming up next, we're going to round out our Monday show with a quick recap of the baseball weekend. Went 3-0 Friday and Saturday. More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple minutes of our Monday show. Now diving into Pac-9 baseball. 3-0 start to begin the season. They played a doubleheader on Friday, one game on Saturday against the Rams of Fordham, swept all three. And for all the expectations that have been placed on this team, and especially with the pitching staff in particular, they looked about as expected. And I think maybe even better than the fact that the bats provided not one, not two, but three efforts to get enough runs to run rule them 3 times. Very impressed with what I saw, and we might be in for a special season.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it. And I'll tell you what, the thing that I find most interesting about what I saw out of NC State against this Fordham team, it is something to be said about a team that has the right countenance regardless of who you're playing against. It's something to be said about a team that comes out of the gates ready to get this thing rolling. And that was something that at times the team last year did not have. Yeah. Just very honestly, obviously that team went to Omaha. So when it was time to turn on, they turned it on. But this team, it felt like in this series, they said, we're on a mission from jump. We're not going to play around with it. We're not going – because last year, and this is no disrespect to the Rainbow Warriors, I remember the Hawaii series where we were like, who is this team? If we didn't have to go home early, Hawaii was looking like they were primed for a comeback and a series win. So, you look at this thing and you say, this team is coming out of the gates extremely hot. And, of course, you talked about the bats having more pop than we expected. But, is the pitching staff not pitching their behind off to start this season off as well? So, you're very excited about those things. That's something that you can't be anything but happy about.
Yeah, of course. Dom Fritton got the first start in game 1 on Friday. I thought he looked kind of still similar to Dom Fritton that we saw last year, but again, it's early. There's only really so much you can take out of the opening series of the year, not to mention the weather was really bad, and Fordham is not exactly your toughest opponent that you'll see in the non-conference anyway, but to handle business, both Fritton, Andrews in game 2 on Friday, and then Ryan Marone dominant in game 3 on Saturday. The starting pitching staff looked about as good, if not maybe a little bit better than what I was hoping for. The bullpen, although you didn't really see them in full effect, we only got Duden briefly, and he kind of got, a rough inning to be thrown into. Same thing with Camden Wimbish. I think you'll be seeing a lot more of him despite some struggles coming out of the bullpen there. However, I think the offense might have been even a brighter spot than the pitching staff, which might sound a little bit crazy based on all the buzz in the offseason. But Chris McHugh very much appears to be a dude. Matt Ossenfort went yard. Alex Sosa went yard twice. Braden Frosman maybe had the best ABs of anyone that I saw all weekend. On base a lot, forced a lot of deep counts a lot. I think he'll be a heavy factor in this lineup as well. Overall, I give the weekend an A- for the Pac-9. 3-0. Again, can't really ask for much better than that. Run ruled all 3 games. Still some things to clean up, I think, both defensively, on the mound, and I don't know. I won't be too picky about what we did at the plate, but they did exactly what we expected them to do, handle business. Now we're moving forward into this coming week, which will be tougher. You have Liberty in the midweek. Liberty is a very tough mid-major. And then coming up this next weekend, you have the Jacksonville College Baseball Classic. We'll play Ohio State, Alabama, and Coastal Carolina. 3 very solid baseball programs. Certainly a much better gauge of where this team will be at in late February. That'll do it for us here on our Monday show. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button. Drop your comments. There should be a ton of these. Tell us what you thought about men's basketball breaking the losing streak. Women's basketball, although playing very well right now, dropping a tough game to the Dirty Foot Club. And baseball beginning the 2025 season at a very impressive 3-0. Mash that subscribe button. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Tuesday for more. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.